Hey, everybody, this is Post Status Draft, and this is another interview in our series on agency owners and post status. And I've got a longtime friend here, Beth Hannon, and I'm going to let her share a little bit more about what you do in our world called WordPress, Beth. But I'm excited about this interview because Beth's very active in the WordPress community overall, very passionate about this key subject called accessibility, and runs a great agency. So, Beth, would you share a little bit about who you are, what your agency does today?
Yep. So our agency is AccessiCart, and we're focused around accessibility, as you mentioned, and in particular, trying to do a little niching toward e-commerce. E-commerce sites tend to be the most frequently sued around ADA in the United States, and then there are increasing regulations in other places in the world too. So we're trying to do that. It's focus on more high interaction sites. So not necessarily just e-commerce, but membership or LMS sites, those kinds of things. Anything that has a checkout form. So that's what we work on.
Absolutely key. One is, as we talked here before on the podcast, one is like accessibility is doing the right thing
Yep.
by all people. But also, I think we don't need anything past that. But if we did, we'd say there's a huge part of the population that can't access websites like a lot of us. And being able to do those things on your website, potentially, if you just need a business reason for a second, it's like that's a whole big crowd there to sell.
25%, 20 to
They
25% of all adults around the world need some accommodation. So that includes everybody. I mean, when I think when people think about that, they're surprised by that number because they don't think it, they think it's this very tiny little percentage, right? So, but it includes people who are blind or have vision impairments, people who have mobility impairments, and not just that they're paralyzed, but that maybe they have a palsy and they can't quite hit your tiny buttons, to things like people who are colorblind, people who have reading disabilities. So when you start, even we work on some things around um, being sure you're um, around anxiety and depression as a kind of a user scenario. Because if your sign up or checkout process is super long and complicated, people just give up, right? So when you start optimizing and making things accessible, you can increase your audience by, potentially 25%, which is huge. I mean, it's probably the biggest optimization rate that you can get. Conversion rate optimizations and those kinds of things are aiming at, 2% would be awesome, right? But
Mhm.
you could really blow it up by 25% would be amazing, right? And people sometimes say, well, people who are blind don't come to my site. And I was like, you know, you would be surprised, right? So,
They might be trying, but not going because your site's not ready
exactly,
for them.
exactly.
But
And why
in
wouldn't you want that competitive advantage, right? If your
exactly
site is accessible and your competitors isn't, then you get those people, right? So,
by doing the right thing, you also
yeah,
get that. You
exactly.
have to say we're doing the right thing. And I don't know, a business leader or owner, if you said you can increase your market share, there's 25% sitting out there, wouldn't drool, wouldn't go, whoa, tell me more. And it's sitting right here in plain sight.
485 billion in million in I'm sorry, 485 million in disposable income,
Mm,
right? That you're just
yeah.
leaving on the table, right? Yeah. So, I mean, that sounds kind of, like they're out there to be sort of to milk, but when you serve, this is the great part about what we get to do as an agency, right? We get to help make online shopping, LMS, membership sites better for people with disabilities, but then we also get to make that, help business owners uh, reach out to those communities more effectively, and yeah, so
Yeah.
it's a win-win all around. I love what we do.
And I think just like any other community with particular passions and needs, is going to talk about that too. So if it's a way to really stand out and get great raving fans doing the right thing.
Yeah, exactly, exactly.
Okay, so thank you for that. And let me digress a little bit into accessibility and thinking of it as conversion rate too, and market size is very compelling. I mean, one right thing, second that. But tell me about your team now. What else about you? That's your focus and what you all
Mhm.
do in WordPress. But
Yeah, so
What
we're
you,
intentionally fairly small. We have three of us full time, a couple part time, and then contractors around the edges for specializations as needed, or pulling folks in when we need some extra help. I really like having us not be super huge. I mean, that's a piece that you get to choose as the agency owner, right? There are people that just really want to grow and scale it and have it be 30 or 40 or 80 people or more, but that's not me. I prefer to work in a smaller group, and so that's what we're doing. That's a piece of why we ended up kind of niching around accessibility and e-commerce or sites, is that in terms of accessibility work, um, a lot of the contracts over the last 10 years have gone to higher education or government. And those two folks really want bigger agencies with a deeper bench to do the fulfillment pieces. And so we don't get to be a player for those kind of audiences. And at the same time, we can have an outsized impact in terms of folks in their e-commerce work. So
absolutely. So what type of clients does that typically shake out to? Who do you all work best with?
yeah. So we're well, it's kind of interesting because, I thought when we went back a bit when we said, okay, we're going to focus on accessibility, that was going to be the niche. And then, the further you get, the more you realize, oh, okay, accessibility and e-commerce. And then it's like, well, oh, okay, and now you got to think more, even more. You got to kind of keep refining that a little bit. I would say we still do. Um, Development and testing and stuff for stuff that's not e-commerce, but folks that need to have accessibility. So we've done we're finishing up projects now for sites that are large nonprofits that are needing to be accessible. We're starting a marketing site for a bank, right? So they have to be accessible. So we're still doing some of that. I would say the places where we kind of do a couple different things, and so at different levels, right? So if it's a relatively smaller e-commerce site in terms of not well, if it's too small, they can't really afford to probably make this work. But if they don't have their own in-house development team, for example, they're in WooCommerce, but they're comfortable having us go in and do some of those remediations for them, working with them. There's a level of that work that we do, and then at larger sites or larger merchants that where they might be in WooCommerce, but they might also be in Shopify or Magento. The testing that we can do, the auditing and testing for them is on the front end of the site. So we don't have to be experts in Shopify to be able to say to them, you have a problem here. This needs to get fixed, right? And so we're doing that level of consulting back and forth. And I've tried, and I think maybe we're just a little early on it in terms of trying to find um, working with other agencies to have them just contract us with us for a bucket of hours where they'll just line up some testing pieces for us. I think it's more effective when we can work around a particular site and then produce documentation for them to do the fulfillment. So um, we in some of the work that we've done, we're averaging like 3 to 5 hours of billable labor for that agency when they have us do an hour of testing. So as we're putting that all together and doing the documentation and handing that off to them to get the approval from the client to do the remediation, that we can have a win-win as a part of that. We just haven't gotten very much and that sounds really good, and agency owners are interested, but we just haven't gotten much traction yet. And I think it's because the client, the site owners just haven't quite gotten to the point where they're feeling the urgency about accessibility. And that may
Well,
come. There's some big changes in the EU coming up in another year or two, year and a half or so. And so we'll see if
yeah,
that moves us.
yeah. Whether you want it or not, it's coming.
Oh,
And, so the need is going to be pressed. Those that aren't up to speed as they should be are going to be forced to be up to speed very quickly.
Yeah, you're going to pay for accessibility one way or another, and the
Mm,
question is, yeah, either you get sued or fined, or you take it, you invest in making accessible. And the
hmm.
question is, do you want to do it on your own terms at your own speed, or do you want to be kind of compelled to do it by some external authority? So,
Well said. Well, okay. Thank you for all that. So that's where you are today.
yep.
I'm really curious to know how you got here. How did you get started
Yeah.
with one, web development, WordPress, how your agency grew to where it is today. So can you walk me back there on the
Yeah.
journey that you've
Yeah,
taken?
because you're a part of that journey. Um, so I had my first career was in nonprofit management, and I was doing near the end of that more and more technical things. So we were doing drag and drop websites, we were doing email newsletters, we were doing social media wasn't there yet, but we were doing that. So in 2008, at the very beginning of the financial crisis, then my organization terminated my position, just kind of downsized my position. And I kind of stumbled into freelancing a little bit. I had no idea that people would pay you to do, email newsletters and websites and stuff. It just had never occurred to me. I don't know why, but it just never had. And I stumbled into doing that. And I told a friend of mine who's an iOS app developer what I was doing, and he said, "Oh, you should be doing those sites in WordPress." And I said, "I have no idea what you're talking about." And so we went. He lived in the Bay Area, I lived in Fresno, and we went home. And the next week, we got it's like before you could do Zooms, that we both got on the phone, and then we both logged into the back end of his WordPress website, and he walked me through what it was like, and it was sort of like my mind was blown. It was like, "Oh my gosh, this would be amazing!" And so I started building sites for people, and then as we needed to do more customization, I started doing. Initially, for a few sites, I used a theme generator called Artisteer. Maybe people remember that. And
I do.
to get the customizations, you had to start learning a little bit of CSS. So I was there, but pretty quickly I found iThemes Builder. And we went there, and the support team at iThemes was awesome in terms of not just telling you how to fix when you had a question about how to customize something. They would not just tell you how to do it, but they would point you through it, walk you through it in such a way that I was learning. I was like, "Oh, CSS, I see that CSS, I see what that's doing." And I started learning more and more CSS and HTML and PHP, and then iThemes started offering the courses, the classes, and Benjamin Bradley and Nathan Ingram and some of those other folks were doing courses, not just on the technical pieces, but on some of the business stuff as well. And along that way, I had picked up part-time folks to kind of start helping out with things, and we grew. Yeah, just kind of grew quite a bit because we were offering. One of the things I'd learned in those workshops was, figuring out the mailbox money. I think that was
That was
Nathan, the
Benjamin's.
mailbox. Yeah, Benjamin, and the mailbox money, and figuring out offering managed hosting. And at one time we had grown, and we probably were offering managed hosting to about 175 sites. Initially, did that in multi-site because that was the only way to manage all the updates. And then, of course, we figured out how to do that and how to spin them all apart with Backup Buddy eventually. And it was I had fun learning all of that stuff. And then we had a client in that came to us in about 2016 who is and they're still a client today. They're a large agricultural water district in California. So they don't give water to consumers, they're delivering to farmers. And they're a kind of a special district or a part of the state of California system. So they became aware in 2016 that they had to become accessible. So we we said, well, let's refer you to somebody. And they said, well, that's all fine, but we want you all to be the people that are going to help us manage this day to day, which was a huge investment in our team. And we got involved. We had heard a little bit about accessibility, I guess, at WordCamps, but not much. And when we dived in and caught a vision of how broad accessibility is. It's not just about making something work for people who are blind, but this much broader kind of being inclusive, and the difference that it can make for people in terms of being able to access things. And almost all of us on the team have somebody in our lives that it would benefit from making a website accessible. And it was just really this sort of aha moment for us, and we kind of began to do more and more and more with accessibility. um, I think we've been spinning down, and as we did, that all of that managed hosting that we were offering at a very low rate, those folks, um, yeah, we just couldn't keep doing that business wise. And so some of my evolution has really been kind of figuring out, oh, I'm really not making money. I'm not really uh, making a living for all of us doing that. And so we began to, I think, 3 years ago, strategically churn some of those folks in terms of raising our pricing up quite a bit. And then began to, especially as our experience level just sort of went through the roof in terms of what we can do, what we can offer, charging more for the work that we do, and feeling like um, we're still in process, because once you kind of get 170, we're down to around 100 now, I think. But even then, I don't think all those people will stick with us in the long run. But we have served them well, I think, and so and we're sending them, handing them off in ways that are, I think, going to be helpful for them too. It's just not a good fit anymore. But um, yeah, we've been, and then I would say we started to do more and more with accessibility. And then over the last, it was about a year ago, we realized, hey, the opportunity, we're missing those government and higher ed opportunities because we're not big enough. And we need to find a way to communicate. We had been using my name in the agency, and I over time began to realize that was problematic because it really didn't convey what our focus was, and it didn't help people. It helped people think that we were small. They thought I was freelancing.
Hmm.
And so, kind of a confluence of those factors led us to rebrand as AccessiCart about a year ago. And it took, it takes a while to do all of that, right? It was not until summer last year that we really kind of got all that together. And we've had a great response to that. And that's been, yeah, been awesome. So,
I always enjoy these stories because it's very serendipitous. You use the word stumble, and I go, same stumbling. I really did stumble and walk back into WordPress. And thank you for sharing the connection too. I knew you had been an iTeams customer, but I didn't know at what depth. And so I appreciate that. And that's exciting. It's fulfilling to know that we had a help in what you're doing.
thank you.
But like how, okay, downsizing from the nonprofit spurred the start of this great agency that you now run. And then a client approaching you about the need for accessibility. And it's funny because what I know of you today is a huge champion for accessibility, particularly in WordPress,
Yep.
for all the things you do. And I don't even know all the things you do, but I know you are continued to keep the conversation around accessibility within the WordPress community. And it's so beneficial to have passionate people, but to see where this start and now you live and breathe it is really
Yeah.
exciting.
And I'm not even the most technical person about accessibility on our team, right? I know conceptually how important it is. I'm super passionate about it, but those like nitty gritty technical details of implementing this thing or that thing are really not my wheelhouse. Which is why we have great people on our team for that sort of stuff, right?
Yeah.
I can be the more of the, in terms of the agency, more of the advocate, the out front, the cheerleader, the
The
pulling it
lead.
along. But but every once in a while, I'll be somewhere and someone will ask this highly technical question, and I'm like, yeah, I gotta call
That's
in
why you
my.
have a great team,
That's exactly
right?
right. That's exactly right. And I don't feel bad about that. And I'm super upfront about that, because I think um, that's that's probably true no matter what your specialization is, right? At a certain
Mm-hmm.
level, I mean, you have enough. commitment, and you understand what that commitment entails, so that you don't have to be in the deep down trenches of it so much that you know what I mean? It's kind of like,
Yep.
in fact, the more you spend there, the less you're spending time on the business. And so we actually continue to have that piece where I wear so many hats, where there's still some technical things that only I do. I'm the one that deals with all the DNS stuff, right? So that's like, so we're still, because we're still small, we all wear those hats. But figuring out how we can continue to manage that, the growth and those projects and pieces
Hmm.
where we still have time for me to work on the
Well,
business and not just in the business, right?
exactly. And I think this is such a technical subject too, that is always evolving. It'd be
Always.
remiss. I love the authenticity and openness of like, I don't know. That's why I have these specialists that know these things, because that's one thing I have learned about accessibility is there is so much nuance to it that it is constantly evolving. Like even
Yes.
knowing that there's an EU thing coming out in the next year and a half. I mean, there's so much nuance to this. And that's why having great agency partners like AccessiCart is key, because you're managing those details. Your team is keeping up with those things. And I love that.
Yeah.
I was talking to one of our fellow agency owners that and the evolving significance of the website in any organization has really evolved from back in the days we're talking about. It was kind of an afterthought.
Yep.
And now it's like, especially through pandemic, have seen the
Yep.
value of the website. And then you go, there's nuances here that you need to pay attention to, like accessibility.
Yep.
So,
Absolutely. And even then, the more we've gotten involved in doing stuff around e-commerce, there are, I think you're right. I think, like when we were first starting out, it was really sort of an afterthought digital brochure, right?
yep,
For the most part.
yep,
And
yep.
then folks grasped, and we did a ton of coaching with folks about how to use the blog functionality for all your dated content, so that you're simplifying some of that management of piece. People did get a bigger idea during the pandemic. But when you start diving into e-commerce, if an e-commerce or even an LMS site or a big membership site, if they're really paying attention and really working on these things, they're starting to deal with levels of detail around conversion rate optimizations and how do you place things on the page to, help, you know, convince the reluctant customer to try your product, right? Or try a trial membership or whatever those kind of pieces are. But that level, getting down into that level of beginning to think about, it's not just throwing stuff up on the page and trusting that people will read this wall of content or what, you have to be thoughtful about how you're putting things all together. And I think people are coming part way. I think accessibility will be an increasing part of that for folks, is really figuring out and I find, as I talk to agency owners and other folks in the WordPress space, the agency folks know it's there. I think in some cases they think their folks have a handle on it, when maybe they have a kind of a very base level understanding, and that's okay. But just understand, and a lot of folks I think are just scared, and
Mhm.
they don't feel like there's they're maybe not fearful is the right word, but they're reluctant to get involved with accessibility until they start hearing from clients that the clients want it. They
Mhm.
don't feel like that, because they feel like it might be just the latest new thing. I get that, right? And so how do they begin to, is it going to be really worthwhile to invest some time and energy and people in? And I'd say I think this is a little different than some of the other fads that may have come across. And so,
Well, I want to switch gears for a moment.
mhm,
We've talked about accessibility, but the work you do with e-commerce and LMS, meaning courses, the
mhm.
ability to create courses, and curious what you're seeing in the broader e-commerce space. We've talked about we had the digital brochure days. Now it's realizing, oh, I can grow my business online. and through WordPress, particularly as the best tool that I know of for sure to do all that. But I'm curious what you're seeing. Like, it seems like there's signals of like when you get into LMS, this is a specialized part of the e-commerce broad brand. What are you seeing in those, the bigger e-commerce and then the LMS space in regards to clients and how they think and are using websites and e-commerce and LMS to power and grow their organizations?
Um, well, I think there certainly are folks that are doing that, and I think there are folks that at least have an inkling that there is more that they could always be kind of tweaking a little bit more. And one of the advantages that people are discovering is that there are communities out there of folks where they can connect and learn from one another. So, you can get involved in e-commerce communities that are maybe some of them even platform agnostic that can begin to talk about, well, what are some of the third-party integrations that you might want to look at? What are some of the strategies for having your own site and site content, but also doing Amazon or also doing Walmart or some of these other platform pieces, right? So, and what are the strategies for pulling those all together? Um, so just kind of finding ways to, and WordPress has always been really great about that sense of community and helping one another. And that's what Post Status really is in a way, right? Is kind of a community of folks where we can kind of bounce ideas off one another, can learn from one another, um, get those ideas going. And so I think I do see that happening, and I see that happening around accessibility some, as well as just more generally about how do we begin to um, keep raising the bar a little bit, right? As you start your site and you get it going, and there's a kind of there, you got to pay attention to all those really super base level kinds of things. And then when you get, I think a lot of times people starting out think, oh, I'll have it made when I get,
Mhm.
this little list of things done. And then, you realize, oh no, there's some more things I need to do, or now I need to tackle this next thing. And it's always going to be that way. It's kind of like, it's always going to be a little bit more that you need to do in terms of optimizing it. And I think business owners are starting to realize that, even just about their non-e-commerce sites, that ideally there's you can't make it the focus of everything, right? But that it's not we still work with clients once in a while, like, I just need a website, and then it's just like, when it's done, and it's going to sit over there for another 5 years, and then I'll come back to it. And that's just not the way websites work anymore, for sure. So
Yeah. Well, if you're only thinking about that, you're thinking very small and leaving a lot of opportunity on the table.
right.
Where nowadays, if you have a business or organization like a nonprofit, you got to. It's par for the course. But I love that you have background and still work with nonprofits too.
Mhm.
I mean, that's a different type of e-commerce, right?
Oh my gosh, yes. And we just finished and launched a couple of weeks ago a site for the and when they first came to us, I mean, this is part as an agency owner too. It was one thing that I had learned along the way was, like, sometimes you get approached, and based on the name or what the organization does, you think, oh, that's a small budget group. They're looking for a $500 website, right? So when we were first approached by the can I say clients?
Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
when I
If
was
you
first
can.
approached by the Transgender Law Center, I thought, oh, yeah, that's going to be fairly small. Oh no, they have a $5 million a year budget. I don't know. There's some funding piece, and they are very sophisticated in all this fundraising that they do, and they're using all these different, like, enterprise level fundraising tools. And what they approached us was about, because they have a significant outreach to people with disabilities, and they had become aware that their own website was not accessible. And so they pursued actually a pretty one of the larger projects that we've done, in terms of, it was a 13-year-old WordPress website and had dozens and dozens of content creators over the years. And so part of what we did was clean a lot of that up, but do lots of accessibility improvements and things like, we discovered hundreds of PDFs that were not accessible. And so we came in, you have to take the content out of the PDF, put it on the page, and then say, well, you can download this here, but here's the accessible content that's on the page surface. And we did, we had multiple people working on all of that for a long time. But yeah, and made it, I think they were a little afraid, there's this stereotype that if it's accessible, it's ugly. And, we went to, you should look at it because we created a really stunning, I think, not me, they don't let me near the design tools, but the design people created just this amazing site that is, that with a vastly improved accessibility. No site is 100% accessible, but the improvements here were quite significant, and it was nice to work with clients that their motivation was not avoiding getting sued. Their motivation was, we have people in our organization who can't access this stuff. So it was great. It was great to work with them.
So let me sidebar a second. You said no site is 100% accessible.
Right.
Tell me more.
So I think that is also a misconception a lot of times, that if we just go to the, the website content accessibility guidelines, if we just make everything according to the guidelines, then we're kind of bulletproof. And there's no such thing, right? Because first of all, a lot of accessibility is contextual. So it depends on what you're trying to do with a particular image, with a particular layout, what the flow of the content is. A lot of that contextual stuff is important. So it's not like accessibility stuff is hard and fast rules, right? And so it's more an art than a science in some ways, right? So that's one. And two, accessibility strategies are changing a lot. And I think it's more effective to think about accessibility as a form of user experience optimization. So you're really just broadening the user personas and thinking about user experience. And so it doesn't make any sense to say your site is 100% on user experience something, that doesn't make any sense at all. But you can certainly there's a lot of low-hanging fruit that you're going to do, just like for user experience, right? In terms of improving that. And so rather than talk about sort of being accessible, you want to say working on accessibility or improving accessibility, right? And it's kind of like SEO in that way, right, too, right?
Yep.
There's a lot of basic best practices that everybody should do. There are some things definitely you can do that are shooting yourself in the foot with SEO or accessibility. But once you deal with those base level pieces, then it's really about continuing to think about that experience, to listen to your users when they give you feedback about something that isn't accessible.
Oh, that's good. Absolutely. From the user experience, if you think about that you reset us there, or me, I go, absolutely. It's another avatar persona to be thinking about as you want people to come to your site and flow through and take an action.
Yeah, but it's not one avatar though, but it's
exactly
many avatars, right? So the colorblind person, the person with low vision, the person who's completely blind, the person who has can't use a mouse, right? So you get all of these various avatars, and there are, I would say, there's certainly a person who's deaf, right? So you get some avatars that are there that you begin to work with, and then it's just sort of human nature. We say, oh, we completely forgot about the person with reading disabilities, right? So now we got to come back and begin to think about, did we take that into account? So
here's a quick sidebar, because you mentioned deaf, and in the initial list, I was waiting for you to say hearing impaired or deaf, and I go, I 6 years ago got hearing aids. And it's amazing. They're Bluetooth enabled, but this is maybe a nuance off the trail of a second, but they're Bluetooth to my phone. And so I'll be looking at the web, and all of a sudden I can always tell when a site has something, like there's no audio video on the page necessarily, but my Bluetooth kicks in for my hearing aids, and I go, now this is the skeptical, hat in me going, what? Why are they accessing my microphone in some way? It's really interesting, but I pay attention to the fact that now I need these. I rely on them every day,
Absolutely. Yep.
and
Me
so
too.
how important that is to to me. And I can just see those that I do have hearing without hearing aids, however,
Yep.
significantly enhanced with hearing aids. Like I can actually, I don't know, function.
Yep.
Um,
Yep.
it brings that more empathetic to me to know, oh, could you even imagine someone with cochlear, for instance, implants, and like that, the need for accessibility just kind of even becomes more aware to me.
Yep. Yep. And the number of people that bring disabilities with them as their users increases with age, right? We all,
Yep.
right? Things like hearing, like you and I got hearing aids within the last year too. And so but
Congrats.
also, thank you. Also things like color perception changes as you age,
Mm,
right? So some of those, as the lens of your eye yellows, right? So there's kind of a
interesting.
biological piece, right? But but it's also, any of us are just one illness or accident away from a disability, right? And so
Mm,
there's that piece of, making it, thinking about including accessibility that kind of sensitizes you to that. But when you think about you're improving the user experience of people with disabilities, when you do that, you actually improve the user experience for everybody. And so
mm.
I usually say it's kind of like those curb cuts in the sidewalk, right? They're made for wheelchairs, but like when I'm dragging my luggage, I'm really grateful for those, right? So
Yep.
it's all of those kinds of improvements will help the user experience across the board for everybody.
Hmm.
So,
Yeah.
do you
And when
watch
you
stuff with captions on?
all the time, I have for probably
Awesome.
10 years.
I started doing it, yeah, about 10 years ago when we were watching British crime shows and I couldn't understand people's accents sometimes. And we watch it with all the time with stuff now. And they say that on social media, people who are watching videos with the sound off, of those people, 80% of them have no hearing impairment.
I
All the time.
obviously needed hearing aids, but I did it because I read much faster than I can follow
Absolutely.
this.
Yeah.
In fact, Zoom has the feature with closed captioning. Sometimes if it's a heavier accent, I'll do it there too. But I'm like, I find myself going, I'm not watching, I'm reading, so often that that's how I get the story. But yeah, and I don't like to have my volume on social media. So I'm really glad that accessibility is a thing,
Yeah.
because I'm like, I don't want to listen to it. I want to read it, you know?
Yep. Yep.
I actually get off put sometimes when everything is video because I go, even though I'm doing video now, is because I want to read the captions. So,
Yeah,
but
but there's if you put like if people are doing a piece like this and then you can get it, there are services to get it automatically converted to a transcript. But
mhm,
when you provide the transcript, in addition to the closed captions, right? If you provide the transcript, then I can remember, oh, Cory and I talked about this one thing, and I'm going to go back to that. Now I can search through the transcript
yeah,
and find it and not have to listen to the whole thing. People do that a lot. People tell us all the time that they do that. So,
I do. I'm glad YouTube now has that part of it, because I want to get the content, but I want to scan down and read. And sometimes I'll play it and just watch the transcript scroll, you know. So, and then we do transcripts, everything we do here. Um,
yeah, yeah.
Probably one for my own. Like I like to do that, but also to make them available in different formats. So,
Yeah, awesome.
well, Bet, thank you for this. I'm curious, what exciting things do you have going now? What are you doing that you're excited about? Next steps, anything you're focusing on that you want to share with our audience?
Yeah, I've been trying to part of part of running an agency is being a bit of an entrepreneur, right? And you're always at least for me, I'm always trying things and focusing on things or just, trying experiments. Sometimes they're just thought experiments and sometimes you're actually kind of build them out a little bit and see if they stick. It's kind of like, throwing the proverbial pasta against the wall to see if it sticks. So I've been playing with um, would having productized services be an interesting thing for accessibility and remediation? So I'm kind of out there. I'm kind of trying to, talking with people who do these things, and they look at what we've got up there, and oh, it's a little confusing. How do you pick a package? Oh, okay, yeah. So figuring out some of those. So that's what I'm playing with right now. Is kind of like, does that really make sense? It makes more sense for a site owner, maybe not for an agency, but although they could contract it out, I suppose. But yeah, just trying to sort through that and play a little bit more with some productized services around accessibility and remediation, auditing and remediation. So yeah.
That's awesome. Well, Bet, tell us where we can find more about yourself and your agency.
Yeah, so our website is accessicart.com, and you can contact me there. I'm still on Twitter some, although it just feels more and more like a ghost town there. And we're on LinkedIn, of course, AccessiCart, and then also Bet Hannon. So love to, and I'm in the Slack for post status, so that's a great place to reach me. So.
Fantastic. Bet Hannon, thanks so much for sharing your journey and what your agency is doing in our world, particularly with e-commerce and accessibility. Keep doing what you're doing, but thank you for being on today for Post Status Draft.
Thank you. It was real fun.